to where they are the same pitch, then I would try applying that to the saxophone, meaning that not that you're singing into the saxophone, but you're just keeping that shape from an E in mind, and you can feel it physically as you're putting the air into the horn. It changes things very much. If you have the E feel versus ah, I definitely feel like everything is much everything is much more open. The thing that's important is, as far as keeping the pitches the same when you're doing these exercises, it's very important that the shape of your throat, other than the opening and closing in the natural shape of those vowels, is important that we're not getting some type of tension or some weird something happening that we might not even know about. If your pitch is changing from note to note, it means that you're not just expanding and contracting your airflow. It means that something else is happening in there. There might be some tension being created. And I think in almost everything, as a saxophone player, technique-wise, which we'll get to in a second, we don't want tension happening in our fingers. As drummers, you don't want it. As piano players, you'll get carpal tunnel and all. Who here plays piano? Piano is actually my first instrument, and as a piano player, you definitely don't want to have real tense stuff like that, because you'll get all types of tendinitis and problems. And it's the same thing for us in using our airflow. We don't want to become fatigued with our embouchure. We don't want to become fatigued with our throat, with our diaphragm. When things are flowing smoothly, we won't get tired. And I know even as a teenager, I was in a Hammond B3 organ player, Charles Erman's band, and my last CD, Mighty Burner was his nickname, and I titled it like in honor of him, because he was the first person that took me all over the world and helped me get signed to Delmark Records as a teenager. And like Mark was saying, between the two tenor with Von Freeman and Ira Sullivan and some other people, Charles Erman was real helpful to me. And we would do on the south side of Chicago, we would do like these 12-hour gigs. They would literally start at like 4 in the afternoon and go till 4 a.m. And it'd be like 45 minutes on, 15 minutes off. 45 minutes on, 15 minutes off. It was real old school, but it was like, for me, as like a 16, 17-year-old, and I had never done anything like that before. I was playing in some rock bands and other stuff. This ska band called International Hoodwink. We opened for like, Smashing Pumpkins and other type rock stuff. But it's where you would do like a 45-minute set and you're done. And as the horn parts, there's a lot of time where you're not actually putting air into the horn and or using your embouchure. But when you're playing a 12-hour gig with a Hammond B3 organ and 2 Leslie speakers pretty much pointed at you, which is why my hearing isn't as great as it should be for a 31-year-old or whatever. So, it is what it is at this point. But I definitely do the what, and so I definitely recommend taking care of your hearing. But long story short, I learned quickly that if you weren't using your airflow properly, you're definitely not going to be able to do a 12-hour gig. You're definitely not going to be able to, drive for 5 hours, go do, a clinic, and then go do, a 3-hour gig, and then drive back with a bunch of band members that, are maybe not the most hygienic people you've ever So, there's just a lot going on. So I guess my point is that even if you're not going to ever have to do a 12-hour gig, it's nice to know you can if you need to. And it makes you have that much more energy to get through the 3-hour gig. And I've seen plenty of saxophone players, I've seen plenty of drummers, I've seen plenty of bass players. How many people have been on a gig where maybe the bass player shows you they got all the scabs on their finger from walking, the bass line like crazy, right? Who's experienced that, right? And so I've experienced that. How many times have you been on a gig with a drummer? And you'll see tonight, my drummer is like 500 pounds. And I'm not kidding. If you come out tonight, if you can't understand, I'll try to take a picture with my phone and email it or post it somewhere. But he's a big guy. He's super strong. He's a powerhouse guy. But I can tell you this, he uses all his stuff like chop-wise and stuff, to the best of its ability. Its technique is flawless. Although running through the Atlanta airport yesterday, I definitely was like a mile ahead of them, being like, come on, man, catch up. And I'm way out of shape, in that capacity. So what I'm trying to get at is that if we maximize everything we have technique-wise, and for us, I really feel there's the two things. One I've been, going over, which is basically the way, not only the airflow, which long tones, and when I hear that type of stuff, which we all practice, that's using, our airflow and maximizing our airflow. But the second portion of that I feel is important, that most time never gets to be taught, and it isn't really talked about, is how we're using the air once we've developed it. So we do the long tones to develop the airflow, and we get our airflow happening. Well then, to take it to that next step, what are we doing with it? How are we shaping the air? It's one thing to have a lot of air and whatnot, but it's another thing to be using it properly. You can buy a car that gets 8 miles to the gallon, or you can buy a car that gets 40 miles to the gallon. And that's my philosophy. I'd rather have the one that goes 40 miles, it gets 40 miles to the gallon, but also still has a lot of performance to it. As opposed to, if a go-kart could get 40 miles to the gallon, but try passing a semi on the highway, you'd be in bad shape. Although sometimes I guess people are saying that these new little smart cars are pretty cool. So I don't know. I haven't been in one yet, but I've seen. Yeah.
Now, do you use the same physical setup to achieve the altissimo?
The altissimo, I definitely rely on my airflow as well. I would definitely say, like when I mentioned the thumb over the garden hose, the altissimo to really be popping in a way that it can be used in a phrase or a line. Definitely the airflow has to be very focused and very fast. This is a song called Sonic Death that's on my last CD, and we just played it on a TV show in Chicago the other day for WGN, and it's kind of repetitive, but it is pretty up in the stratosphere. That's like the last phrase of that, and to be able to make sure to be nailing those with a similar attack and the energy that I'm looking for out of that, I have to make sure my airflow is really fast. Equally so, even if I'm playing it quieter. I would say I'm actually probably moving my airflow even faster than I was when I was playing louder, except for, again, if you're going to try to relate it to the vowels again, I'm definitely using a broader airstream, more along the, the ooh type, just a fatter airstream than the E, the more, I don't want to say tensed or pinched, but just making sure the airflow is rather accelerated. So I would say, in addition to having the air, which is what's going to come from the long tones, having the speed of which you're using your air, and literally the way it's shaped as it's coming out of your body. When you think about it, what do mouthpieces do? A baffle, no baffle, a big chamber, no. They're actually shaping the air as it's going into the mouthpiece. They're shaping the air as it's hitting the horn, right? The mouthpiece is shaping it in a different way, and some mouthpieces have different, virtues to them, some don't. So my thinking is, if we can actually control our air well enough to where we're shaping it before it even gets into our mouthpiece, we've added a whole nother level of dimension to our playing, control over our playing. So that's why earlier I was saying, as long as you have a mouthpiece that effectively and efficiently uses your airflow, you should be in really good shape. And you should be able to, obviously a baffle mouthpiece like a Dukoff or something is going to sound, a lot different than like a tubby chambered, old Selmer mouthpiece. So they're going to be very different. But we've just added a lot more control that I'll bet you money that if you have somebody, that is real efficient with their airflow playing on both of them, you will hear a difference, but it won't be like here to here. And that's just my opinion. But no, that's a really good question.
So are you playing on a fairly low baffle mouthpiece?
Mine has no baffle to it at all. And I personally, I mean, again, everyone's different. I used Gargalis for a while, but my Live at the Green Mill CD, and I had the 82,000 Summer Mark 6 tenor, which was a great horn, and it still is, and I still have it. That horn played